Welcome to OAC's monthly broadcast. My name is Mackenzie Burrows.
And I'm James Zervios, and welcome back for Season 2, Episode 2. Mackenzie, your first episode, welcome.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here.
All right, and so before we get started, we do want to definitely let everyone know that you're in our thoughts right now, especially out in the Midwest with all of this crazy winter weather that we're seeing. So we know a lot of folks, probably aren't able to tune in if there's no power, but we're definitely thinking of you guys and hoping you're staying safe and staying warm as well.
Well, with that, we will jump right into things. So let me give you a quick preview at what's going to come on today's broadcast. We will start off with our OAC updates and bring you our latest activities and an advocacy update. And then we will move into today's trending topic, which is looking beyond the headlines at rising childhood obesity rates. And we will bring in an OAC member to give a parent's perspective on that topic. So that's very exciting. And then we will move into our discussion topic today, which is how weight bias plays a role in coverage and treatment for obesity.
Yeah, Mackenzie, before we get started, we want to tell people about the amazing OAC swag that we're going to give away today. So this beautiful OAC tumbler that you see here, the logo and this OAC green lid, it's perfect for hot or cold beverages, so you're going to want a chance at that.
Yes, and then we also have this awesome OAC blanket, so congratulations to whoever gets this in advance.
And you will find out who gets it if you stay till the end of the broadcast and keep commenting in the comment section below. And before we get started, let's say hello to those that are joining us today. It looks like we have Karen from Brazil. Hi, Karen. How are you doing?
Hi, Karen. And then it also looks like we have Rita joining us from Dubai. Wow.
And Vernon from Santa Barbara, California. Hello, Vernon. Thanks for joining us.
And then I'm also seeing in the comments here that we have Korean joining us from Tallahassee. That's right here in Florida where we're at, but from Tampa.
And even Andrew from Australia. So, Andrew, thanks for joining us from Australia as well.
Great representation today.
So, and you guys are going to want to keep watching till the end of the broadcast. Keep commenting. That's your chance to win these fabulous OAC swag that we have with us today. And so, definitely thank you to everyone who's joining us today from all over the world. I think that's the amazing thing is you've seen these broadcasts, Mackenzie, the viewership just keeps continuing to grow all over the world, just beyond the U.S.
Phenomenal to watch.
So we'll dig right in. So for OAC updates today, last week we had some fabulous news come out of Novo Nordisk, one of OAC's partners, and they shared information on their new medication, semaglutide, which is not yet available, but really showed some phenomenal weight loss, upwards of, in the range of that 15 to 20%. And so that is just phenomenal news, especially for another tool in the toolbox when it comes to obesity treatment, which we know, Mackenzie, is so difficult that for us to make these strides, but great that we have another therapy coming down the pipeline.
Absolutely, and I think it was last broadcast you mentioned that we have over 1,400 physicians that are waiting to take the obesity certification exam. So I think when you pair that tidbit of information with the news about semaglutide, I think that it really shows that the treatment horizon for obesity is extremely promising.
Absolutely, absolutely. And even moving on from there, so you may have seen OAC team member Melissa Woolley was on social media last Friday making the huge announcement that YWM 2021 will be virtual for this year. And the dates are July 17th to the 25th. And if you want to learn more about YWM Convention, go to ywmconvention.com and sign up for Convention e-news alerts. You're going to be the first to know about the program agenda, when registration is opening, all of those details that we know everybody wants to know when it comes to convention.
Absolutely. You know, this convention will be no different. I know from working with a lot of our members that people look forward to this convention all year long. We bring an amazing lineup of speakers. There are tons of education and support opportunities. So it is truly an event that you don't want to miss out on.
Absolutely. And last but not least, Obesity Care Week is 11 days away. That'll be starting February 28th, run through March 6th. And Obesity Care Week is really a very, very special week here in the U.S. as it allows us to raise awareness of obesity and the different issues that are impacting individuals with obesity throughout the week. And so World Obesity Day will be taking place March 4th during that week. And then there's a lot of different things we're going to be covering, from weight bias to childhood obesity, obesity treatments and prevention, and so much more. And you can stay in the know about Obesity Care Week 2021 by going to obesitycareweek.org and signing up for alerts. You'll be the first to know when all of the information is available.
All very exciting. And speaking of Obesity Care Week, I know that it is an awareness campaign, but there are going to be tons of advocacy opportunities that you can take part in from the comfort of your home. So I'll give you a quick look ahead of what you can expect that week. First, the OAC has scheduled virtual meetings with congressional legislators and their staffers, urging them to co-sponsor the reintroduction of the Treat and Reduce Obesity Act. And then on World Obesity Day, which is March 4th, we're going to be sending a letter to President Biden asking him to ensure that obesity is a priority on this administration's agenda. And then also throughout the week, you can expect an opportunity to help us humanize the disease of obesity on I Care Day, which you can submit your own I Care video telling everyone why you care about obesity. And then, of course, always make sure to go on social media and share there as much as possible. Social media is an amazing tool for driving awareness, engaging in important dialogue, and it's just a great way to talk about Obesity Care Week. And don't forget, the best way to get updates about all of these opportunities is to sign up for Obesity Care Week alerts at obesitycareweek.org.
Yeah, Mackenzie, you mentioned so many great things that'll be happening during that week, and especially the I Care Day. That was a phenomenal thing that we did last year where we really showed the human side of obesity and people dealing with this disease and also those on the front lines working with people. So absolutely sign up for those alerts. We're going to have so many exciting things that will be available that week, and so really looking forward to it. And one of those days is Childhood Obesity Awareness Day, right? So we're going to talk more about that topic, which is the perfect segue into today's trending topic. And so we know that childhood obesity is one of those things that has continued to come up in the media, especially recently with COVID-19 pandemic, right? So all these children are doing remote learning, and we're seeing childhood obesity becoming more and more prevalent. And in fact, it was just a couple weeks ago that the American Academy of Pediatrics, AAP, released a statement saying, basically in most layman's terms, hey, even with everything going on right now, we still need to focus on childhood obesity because this is still very much an issue. And so this is just the perfect segue for today's trending topic.
Absolutely. I think, we know here at the OAC that adult obesity is so complex, and that is no different for childhood obesity. It's a very complex issue, and it's also a really sensitive issue. So that's why we felt it was important to really go beyond the headlines on this topic and bring in someone. So we have OAC member Liz Paul, who is joining us today. She is an active member and volunteer, serves on many of OAC's committees, and she is going to come on and share her personal perspectives on this topic and shed some light about how she navigates childhood obesity within her family. So with that, we have Liz on right now. Welcome, Liz. We're so happy to have you.
Hi.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
So Liz, you're a wife and a mother, and you've been vocal about this topic, with OAC members before about navigating childhood obesity within your family. So can you share us a little bit about, what these headlines mean to you when you see them on the news?
My own struggle with obesity really started in childhood, and so it's something that is personal to my own experience because I experienced bullying and shaming as a child because of my weight. But as my own children have started to struggle with obesity, it really took on a whole new dimension as a parent and wanting to find ways to address the topic of childhood obesity from a family-centered approach and a way that gave them tools without shaming or stigmatizing them and their bodies.
Yeah, Liz, I think what you're talking about there is so important, and as we know, and you mentioned this, that obesity in general it's a chronic and it's a complex condition with a lot of factors involved. And as a parent, what other factors related to childhood obesity do you feel really need to be taken into consideration?
Well, there are just so many that come, particularly when you're dealing with kids. I know for our own family, my son struggles with depression and anxiety, and that really impacts his weight. There are some medications that mess with it as well. in addition, they've been distance learning for the better part of a year, and that has kept them from being active with their family or with their friends. It's kept them from recess time and extra time outside. Parents who are working from home trying to raise their families, get schoolwork done, are reliant on screens a lot more than they might normally be. And so there are a lot of factors at play on the average family right now that might be impacting a child's weight.
Liz, I think that what you touched on is so important because it is so easy to look at these headlines and think, oh, well, children just need to be eating less and moving more. But, we know it's not that simple. And so that's why I think your perspective about all the other factors that are involved in this discussion is so important. And kind of shifting gears a little bit, why do you feel like a family-centered approach to this is so important? And how can families navigate this topic with both sensitivity and respect?
As I said, I dealt with a lot of bullying and stigma and shame that resulted from my own childhood obesity. And that's the last thing I want to pass on to my own children. So in taking a family-focused approach on health and not just weight, we can really bring a focus to our kids on doing the right things that will create healthy tools and empower them for healthy living beyond a weight on a scale. So that involves going on family walks, exercising together as a family, moving our bodies together as a family. It involves cooking together as a family, talking about, well, why do we need to fuel our bodies? How do we fuel our bodies well? And what are foods that give us good energy? And really creating that as a family takes a lot of the shame away from it for a kid, because it's not saying, well, you can't have this, or you can't do this, or you must do this because you are overweight. That's a shameful way of doing it, saying we all need to do this because moving our bodies makes us feel good and feel powerful. That's an entirely different way of framing things, and it's impactful for our children.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Liz, you hit on so many valuable points there. And as a parent, what resources do you find valuable in navigating this topic, especially with your children? And what do you think that we as a society could be doing right now to really reframe this issue?
One of the things I'd really want people to learn and take away from this is to be able to have the conversation, particularly those who have some authority here, pediatricians and people who are seeing families, to really listen and see what's going on in a child's life who might be starting a struggle with obesity, because it often isn't those things about, oh, they just are given too many Oreos. It might be that they don't have access to fresh food. There may be a food desert. There may be a lack of support at home. There may be a whole lot of things that are at work and at play. And until we get to the root causes, children who are struggling with obesity, the obesity is the result of other causes. It's not the first cause, so we really need to have providers and resources available to figure out what's going on in the lives of kids, so we can give them the tools they need to lead healthy lives.
Liz, I think you brought to light so many good points today for those watching, and I think it just really goes to show that this is a very, very complicated issue. And so we want to thank you very much for your time today, and thank you for being on the broadcast. And we really appreciate you bringing this first-person point of view to this very, very important and critical issue that right now that we're dealing with.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for bringing this to light.
Thank you, Liz.
So Mackenzie, I think Liz talked about a lot of different things that just showcase how complex and how difficult dealing with childhood obesity can be. And And in fact, we know that it needs to be treated on the same level as it does with adults. And just, again, going back to the complexity, and we even saw in the comments that Michelle says, I have such guilt for having passed on these genes to my now adult children who have struggled since adolescence. And so I think just that right there, that comment speaks to the fact that it's not just about, the eat less and move more, a mantra that we always hear, even with adults, but especially with children.
Behavioral, genetic, biological, there are absolutely so many components that a lot of people don't realize come into the equation when we talk about obesity. Yeah. And one of the things that really hit home for me was, Liz talked about focusing on health as a family and not a number on the scale. And I think that's super important to shift that focus on health because it does pave the way for families to be able to work on healthy lifestyles together and pursue a more a better goal.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is a good segue into our discussion topic today. Another topic that Obesity Care Week will be covering is access to care. Access to care is actually a big focus area for the OAC. We deal a lot with it. But, in all the times that we've spoken about access to care, I think one thing that we've always recognized is that term can be really complicated to understand, what is access to care?
Yeah, Mackenzie, I think it is one of those things that when we talk about access to care as an organization, we often, we don't really, we have to define that, right? And so access to care could be insurance coverage, it could be having appropriate seating at your doctor's office. Access to care is a lot of different things. And so, we want to help break this down for people because we know, especially with access to care, weight bias is just another issue that people are dealing with. And so, so with that, we wanted to bring on OAC President and CEO Joe Nadglowski and then Dr. Lloyd Stegemann, metabolic and bariatric surgeon, to talk a little bit more about this topic and help really break it down for folks. And so, Joe, Dr. Stegemann, are you with us?
First of all, Dr. Stegemann, welcome, and we appreciate you being here today. First of all, I want to just do a quick just check in with you and the family and your community. I know you've been in the midst of that terrible winter storm, so just want to check in to make sure everyone's doing okay.
We are slowly thawing out, but yes, we're doing fine. Thank you.
Yeah, and hopefully we won't have
come through a lot better than a lot of our friends and neighbors have. So our thoughts are certainly with them. As you guys know, in Florida, we're just not equipped to handle this cold weather, but we'll make it. Texans are strong.
Good. I'm glad to hear that, and hopefully our internet and power will stay stable through this, and we'll finish this up. But let's just go ahead and dive in. So, you and I have we've spent a long time. We've been working on this for a long time around this. Advocacy to improve access to care, but I know that terminology isn't really understandable for many of our members. So what does access to care mean to you?
So for me, access to care means that when someone decides that they want to get to our medical system to help treat their weight, that they have the ability to have that paid for through their insurance, whether that be nutritional counseling, behavioral counseling, exercise counseling, all the way up to doctor's visits, medications, and even surgery if they decide to go that route. As long as it is a scientifically valid method, I personally believe that every insurance should cover that for that individual.
And so maybe the answer to my next question is obvious, but so is the insurance companies themselves your biggest frustration when it comes to access to care?
Well, it's certainly part of it. I mean, probably my biggest frustration is how much progress we have made on our understanding of obesity and how effective good obesity management can be. And coverage is lacked so far behind, and it's very, very frustrating to see that. I mean, I think we've done an amazing job as scientists and medical people doing the research and getting it out there, and it just hasn't been well accepted yet. And that's definitely frustrating, especially when I see, the top 10 CEO salaries last year in healthcare were $300 million. That money's coming on the backs of people who pay their premiums every single month. And that's incredibly frustrating.
So if you could snap those fingers today or wave your magic wand and change one thing, what would you change about our obesity care system?
So, I think the biggest thing I would change is just the understanding of the disease of obesity. We have come so far in our understanding, and we know it's not about fault. We know it's about physiology, right? And we need to get that understanding out there that people shouldn't be ashamed about coming forward on treatment. When 70% of the country struggles with their weight, this is not a willpower problem, right? This is a physiologic problem. We have a clear understanding the role of genetics and the role of the environment, and just how it's almost impossible for someone to really lose and then maintain that weight loss without help. And since we know that, why are we putting up all of these barriers for people to get that help?
Right. Yeah, I think one of my biggest personal frustrations is there's a stigma about living with obesity, but then there's this stigma about seeking help. And it appears that the system is set up to put barrier in front of us to be able to access that care. You have to fight for it. And even when you try your hardest, sometimes you can't access the services you need. So.
Yeah, and I find that incredibly frustrating, and it's frustrating me that we haven't made more progress. Since when I went into this, I didn't have a beard and I didn't have gray hair. But the fight continues, and we can't give up.
Yep. So I know another topic that you and I have spent a lot of time talking about is getting more aggressive in our advocacy work. I mean, in fact, you and I have often joked and even said we're going to start a fund to collect bail money so that when we chain ourselves in front of an insurance company's front gates, that someone will be able to bail us out. But yeah. What do you think being more aggressive is in terms of advocacy for the everyday member of OAC? So
I think more than anything, it's speaking up. And at every opportunity, when somebody says something that is nuanced and biased, point it out. I honestly don't feel like a lot of people will do these things out of being mean. It's out of ignorance, right? And speaking up at every time that it happens is a positive step forward. And we're not going to see this fixed. We're not going to see it fixed in the courts. We are not going to see this, adjudicated. This is going to be people speaking up. And really, it's been that way throughout history. When you look at women's suffrage, when you look at civil rights, when you look at the AIDS epidemic, it was people saying enough is enough. I'm not going to take that anymore. I'm going to stand up and fight for it. We've got to get to that point where the 70% who are affected by this disease process are willing to stand up and raise their voice.
So if we've convinced our viewers now that they want to take action, any suggestions on where they should start? Is that in their local community? Is the state level? Is the federal level? Is it on the internet? I don't know. What do you think? So
yes, and yes. I mean, I really do think it's all of those things. And certainly starting locally is the easiest thing to do, right? You have immediate access to your local. Start with your employer. I mean, does your employer cover weight management services? If the answer is yes, tell them thanks. I mean, I think that goes a long way to say thank you for taking care of us. And if they don't, I think that's a good time to open up the conversation and say, well, why don't you cover that as well? And then, you can start moving up into the state and up into the national level. And if you don't know what to do, goodness, just get in touch with the OAC. I mean, we can do training with people. Joe, when we go to legislators all the time, they want to hear from their constituents. For me, they always think I have a vested interest because I make my living caring for people who struggle with their weight. And it's that individual story that is so powerful to the legislator. And we need people who are willing to stand up and tell their story.
I agree completely. And I just want to emphasize that early point you made about talking to your employer. I think oftentimes we complain to our employers when we don't have something. But if you're actually a person who's been able to access the care you need and your employer has provided the insurance for that, you should go tell them thank you, right? And you should say, look, this helped me. And you need to let other people know within the company that these same services are offered and they can help other people as well. Because oftentimes one of our barriers is lack of knowledge that people do have some coverage for this care. So.
Absolutely, yes. And I think it's also a good time, I'm more involved on the surgery side, but I'll say, it's also a good time to say, it's great that I was able to do this. Look how healthy I am now. I'm just curious why you made me do all of these hurdles ahead of time, because most of the time the employer doesn't know this is happening either. And again, it's a good opportunity to open the conversation.
So I think we've gone there a little bit, but so, one of the things we hear from our members, and we've even seen in our surveying, is many of them will say, well, I've already been able to access treatment. So, why is the access to care fight important to me, right? Yeah. So what would you tell them?
Well, I would tell them that's fantastic you were able to have access today. But what about when your employer changes the insurance company tomorrow? Are you still going to have it? Are you going to get continuing treatment? And maybe you have coverage, but does your sister or does your aunt, does somebody else have coverage? We know that insurance is constantly in flux. And as an employer myself, I know we have to look for cost-effective plans. And so that means change. And once we get universal coverage, it doesn't matter whether it changes or not. Whichever insurance you flow to, you will still have the ability to treat your weight.
And then finally, we have a lot of members who join us and join OAC because they're being denied care today. So what kind of message do you have to them, both to keep them uplifted, but also encourage them to continue to engage in the fight? So.
Yeah, and my biggest message would be don't quit. Don't look at this one answer as the end. Maybe your insurance provider is going to change. Talk to your employer. You'll be surprised at how open employers are in listening to their employees. And then get involved. Don't be quiet about it, whether that's through social media, through that OAC, however you want to voice that. You need to voice it and get other people who feel the exact same way to voice it as well. We can't do this alone. It is going to take a tidal wave of people saying the same thing before we're ever going to move the needle on this. But I still believe it can happen. I still believe that's going to happen when enough people finally stand up and say, this just isn't right.
Thanks, Dr. Stegemann. We really appreciate your time today. We appreciate all your service on the board and your co-chairing our Access to Care Committee. And remember, to anyone watching today, if you're struggling with a specific access to care issue, OAC has a reporting tool on our Action Center or on our Action Center on our website, and you can actually report those issues, and we can give you what advice we can on how to work through that. We have a group of folks who actively offer advice to our participants. So thanks again, Dr. Stegemann. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy day today, and we look forward to having you on the broadcast again soon. With that, I'm going to turn it back to James and Mackenzie in the studio one day. Actually, I think it's next month. I'm actually going to get to sit in one of those chairs. Looking forward to that, but we'll see you all soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Joe, Dr. Stegemann, I want to thank you again for coming on. I think that your segment really rounded out the discussion on access to care. And, I continue to learn so much from the both of you being on the OAC for, I think, 5 years now. So I just want to thank you for your time and thank you for coming on today to explain that for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really, those key takeaways for people, Mackenzie. If you are dealing with an access issue, let us know on the OAC website. If you currently have coverage for obesity treatment services through your employer, tell them thank you, especially if you're utilizing those services. And Dr. Stegemann talked about how it's going to really take a large group of people to make a difference when it comes to changing access to care. And the OAC makes that so easy for people, especially through the OAC Action Center. I think right now there's probably the Treat and Reduce Obesity Act on there. There'll be all this new stuff coming up for Obesity Care Week. And so we know that access to care can be intimidating, but OAC really tries to make it as simple as possible for people to do something.
Absolutely. If you have any questions about taking action, you can always email membership@obesityaction.org or info@obesityaction.org, and we will help you get started in your own advocacy journey as well.
So with that, Mackenzie, while we had a technical glitch, this is the end of your first episode. So
Yes.
Amazing to have you on and do this, and we know that we're going to have you on again. But because it is the end, that means it's giveaway time. Yeah. So our first giveaway, our first winner of the OAC tumbler will be Becky Hoffman. So congratulations, Becky.
Yep, and it looks like the winner of the awesome OAC blanket is Jacqueline Patricia Icing.
Congratulations, Jacqueline. And so you want to stay tuned. You're going to see us next month. As Joe said, he'll be on next month's broadcast Wednesday, March 17th, which is
St. Patrick's Day.
St. Patrick's Day. So you're going to see Joe and Christy here live on the broadcast. Of course, in between now and then, stay connected with OAC on social media. If there are any topics that we haven't covered that you really just want to see us take a deeper dive into, email us. Tell us at social@obesityaction.org. Again, thank you very much. We apologize for the technical difficulties that we experienced today. Thank you for staying with us, and we always appreciate having you all a part of the OAC broadcast. Thank you.
Have a good one.